My name is Esther, and I was diagnosed officially in February of last year. But I think that my story is not unique, that it's a very long process, especially for those of us with young onset, to get to the final diagnosis. So my symptoms officially started in 2020 during the COVID pandemic. I was working in a hospital. My husband also works in a hospital. So it was obviously a stressful time. I think there's probably interesting research to be done about how stress can perhaps, hasten and bring on symptoms sooner, because everything that I was experiencing, I was experiencing in the context of my work. So it began with just not sleeping. I think insomnia is probably the least understood and the least acknowledged, but most important of the Parkinson symptoms, because when you don't sleep, everything else gets so much worse. And so I wasn't really sleeping during the pandemic. And I have small kids, so they were like 7 and 8 at the time. And, when the school shut down, the kids were home, and it was just crazy time. So I knew that I wasn't sleeping. Then I started to wake up with like when your foot falls asleep, that feeling, like that tingly feeling. I had that in my arm and my hand, and it would like increase. And I had and still have tachycardia, like my heart beats fast during certain times. I especially noticed it after I ate. And then I started having pain in my shoulder and neck. But again, I just thought it was like stress, like I was tensing, like I just felt really tense all the time. So I'd get massages and stuff, but it just kept getting worse. And then one day I was in a really stressful situation and my hand just moved on its own. Like it just kind of boop. And I was like, oh, that's not good. So by that point, I knew I had enough symptoms to go see a doctor. So I went and I saw a doctor. Here we call them primary care physicians, internal medicine specialists, just like your general family doctor. And he immediately was like, you have too much stress. You probably need to start antidepressants. And I don't have anything against antidepressants, but I was like, I think that's maybe not like gonna fix everything for me, because my hand is still like occasionally, my tremor didn't start like most people's. It started kind of like a pulsing on the vein in my hand, and then a little bit of a tapping, but it wasn't all the time. It was, again, like when you're stressed, when you're cold, when you experience pain. I started to identify all these triggers. So I would just like reduce the triggers and I could control it. That's another thing. I've had multiple people tell me doctors told them they couldn't have Parkinson's because they could control their tremor. I could and still can largely control my tremor if I reduce enough of the triggers. Of course, that changes over time. So I got a CT, a scan of my shoulder. That was normal. I had all my labs done. That was normal. But my tremor did start to get worse. And so I went to a neurologist, and the first neurologist that I saw just said, "Can you walk for me?" That's all she said, just like walk up and down a hallway. And I came back and she's like, have you thought about Parkinson's? And I was like, no. And she's like, okay, we're going to order a DAT scan. And if you want, we can start you on this medication. And if the medication makes you feel better, then we'll know you have Parkinson's. Well, my husband is a doctor of pharmacy, and I was a pharmacy technician, and that made no sense to us. Like, why would you give somebody a medication to see if they have a condition, So we left, and my husband was like, we have friends that are in healthcare, so he called a friend who was a neurologist, and he's like, go see our friend. So I went, and he said, no, absolutely, like there's no way you have Parkinson's. We're gonna test you for all these other things, and then if the last thing is left is Parkinson's, then we'll know you have Parkinson's. So that took like a year. I had, multiple MRIs, different tests, CSF, spinal tap study, all that stuff. And in the course of that, they found out that I have a lot of the markers for multiple sclerosis. So I was originally diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, but that never sat well either. It just didn't feel right, you know? So I went to the Mayo Clinic, which is a very famous clinic in this country, as an MS patient. And I saw two neurologists there. And I saw them separately, and then they came back and conferred, and then they came to me and they're like, "We think you have Parkinson's. We don't think you have MS. We think you have what's called I think it's called radiological isolated syndrome. Like you can have the markers for MS, but you may never actually have MS. But like it may not break out. And so we're going to send you to a movement disorder specialist." So that same day, a movement disorder specialist came and saw me and diagnosed me officially with Parkinson's disease. And it's so crazy because when you talk to a movement disorder specialist and you start to tell them all of the what seem like unrelated symptoms in your mind, like my arm wasn't swinging when I walked, or sometimes I would trip, or I would get dizzy in the shower. I was having problems brushing my teeth, that hand movement, washing my hair, that hand movement, flipping a pancake. But it just does, like, how would that be Parkinson's, right? But they recognize that right away, and it's amazing because not everybody has access to that. I don't. Where I live in West Texas, we do not have a movement disorder specialist. I travel 8 hours to see one, so that's how I got here. The non-motor symptoms, specifically the things related to mood. I had known for some time that, especially in my work, that I just had this general feeling of lack of interest in things that I used to be very passionate about. And then I would kind of hyperfixate on certain things. And now that I know more about the disease, I know that it's very, very common that the apathy, the anxiety, the depression. My MDS actually, when he finally diagnosed me, he said, he said, the depression is what will get you before the motor symptoms with young onset in particular, because we have such a long journey with this and we have so many other stressors in our lives, But probably the other thing too was when I found out about the vocal stuff, the throat things, because people had started telling me that they couldn't hear me, that I was like, I started, because I did a lot of public speaking in my work. And I had started to notice people like leaning in, like I'm talking and they're like struggling to hear me. And I, like, probably a decade ago, after the birth of my first child, I noticed that. But I would never have thought that that was, a thing. I thought people were just bad listeners. And now I know so many people with vocal issues. I myself have a speech therapist that I see weekly. That one was a shocker too. And the loss of smell. I don't have the loss of smell, but most of the people I know have the loss of smell. And certainly I had no awareness of that. Important thing that I did was twofold. One, I asked for referral to a physical therapist. I think that first encounter out of diagnosis was with a physical therapist, and just the emphasis on having this disease in the healthiest body that I can made a big difference, because like what I now know is the dystonia that I have, the muscle tightness that I have at my shoulder, it's not going to go away. But I've been given tools of stretching and exercise that make that manageable for me. The medication is great, it helps too, but that realization that there's things that we can take into our own hands to do to alleviate some of our symptoms was probably the best thing that I did for myself. And it was not something that was offered to me. I asked for it. The second thing is community, reaching out to other people with the disease. I think a lot of people have fear of facing other people with this disease, especially in the later stages, because it's not something that you want to think about. But you will benefit from connecting with other people with Parkinson's in a way that you will not in any other group of people. And even the ones that are so much more advanced, they have so much wisdom to and a community to offer you and support. So those are my two really big advice to people. I recognize how privileged I am. First of all, that I have education in healthcare. I mean, my graduate degree is in healthcare. You know, I have access to you know, good care, but I know what that looks like. And I think that a lot of people forget that um, healthcare is about us. I mean, it sounds selfish. I think people want to view it as selfish, but it's not. You know, this is a service that we pay for. It's not free in this country. And even places where it's quote unquote free, I mean, you're still paying from your taxes. Nothing in this world is free. So you have to, that's how I look at it as a consumer, that I'm going to ask for what I want. And if I hadn't have done that, I would be on MS infusion medications right now, deteriorating, you know? I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I speak out for the people that I know can't speak out for this for whatever reason. And I try and share what I do know to empower people, because it's just human nature to do kind of the bare minimum in so many fields. I mean, I don't really even blame the doctors and things, because I've worked in hospitals and doctors' offices all my life. My father was a doctor. So the pressure is on all sides of it. I mean, my husband is a doctor. Like, I know how hard that job is, but we have to be the squeaky wheel, you know. If we're not, we will just fall through the cracks. And I have a friend who says we have to be the CEO of our own healthcare, and I think that that is so true. I'm very vocal about every part of this as long as I can be, and then I hope, I'm always telling my husband, like, if I'm unconscious or whatever, like, you have to stick up for me. Like, don't let them do this, don't let them do that, you know. And fortunately, he works in healthcare too, so he's always been that advocate for me as well. And our care partners are so important in that role, especially as time goes on. But yeah, we have to, super important. I have to admit, during the pandemic in particular, I think a lot of us were kind of forced into backburnering our social networks. And I mentioned that my husband is Persian, and so if you know any Persians, like, they are very social people. So he that community is really good about, you know, pulling you in and making sure, you know, that you stay active. But I have to really force myself to do it in a way that I didn't before. So I try and make a point, you know, to connect. As you know, I mean, I'm pretty active online, but to still give attention and time to, you know, the people in my life, in my quote unquote, you know, real life. Like I said, I have young children, so a lot of my social things revolve around, you know, soccer games and orchestra events, and, you know, my mom friends, which are so important. I think as women, you know, those connections with other women, just on the day to day, are so very important. And I do not, and I was talking to my husband about this the other day, like, I'm not working anymore. I've retired to devote myself to my family and Parkinson's advocacy full time. But I'm still going to get my hair did. I'm still going to get my Botox, not on my dystonia, but on my face. um, and um, and you know, just be me. Like, who I was before Parkinson's hasn't changed. Parkinson's hasn't changed, you know, me as who I am, and I am still going to be trying to be, you know, the you know, myself with Parkinson's. How I see other people, strangely enough. which I never would have associated with that. But I now, when I look at other people, maybe people that I used to look and think like, oh, wow, that person has everything. You know, I wish I had what that person has. Like they have it all together. Like they have, you know, I look at people the opposite of that now. I look at people and I think that person has a struggle and I don't know what it is. And that's okay, but everybody has some struggle. It might not be, you know, a degenerative brain disease, you know, it might be, you know, a body image issue. It might be problems in their family. It might be financial, you know, it could be anything. But I don't envy people anymore. I'm very thankful, so much more thankful for what I have. And I feel like this disease humbles you, you know? Like I was so confident in my health. I didn't even have a doctor, you know? The only time I went to the doctor is when I had my babies, you know? And so once you wake up and you struggle to walk, you realize, wow, I took advantage of so many little things that um, that I have to, you know, appreciate everything that I have. But yeah, I look at people totally different now. People that even, I mean, look, you look at celebrities now, like that have these these struggles of their own, and so I think it makes you feel like more connected to society in a way because
Mhm.
we all share in our struggles, and everybody's really a hero that makes it through it every day. I talked a little bit about, you know, just my lack of motivation and apathy and mood issues. There is something very magical about music in this disease, and
Mhm.
I don't understand it at all. But I need music to motivate me to do pretty much anything. I have constant. Actually, I just got a new pair of AirPods because my other ones burned out. I have at least one in my ear all the time. The cadence, the rhythm of the music helps me walk. It kind
Yeah.
of like snaps me into a pace, and
Mhm.
it helps me remember like to swing my arm and things like that.
Mm.
Music will make me move. It will, you know, kind of also does remind me of you know happier times in my life if I'm sad,
Mhm.
or you know, gets me to dance, which is always good. Movement is so important. I mean, we have to keep moving. I always say movement is life. So if you don't already listen to music on a regular basis, I strongly suggest that you start making playlists. I have like doing the laundry playlist, walking to school playlist, exercise playlist, you know,
Mm.
music is a miraculous thing. I'm in probably at least 6 support groups right now. And
Mhm.
out of those, one of them that I like in particular is just females with YOPD.
Mhm.
And see how the dynamics are different. Um, I see this, and this is not universal, and I'm not trying to make generalizations, but I see kind of two mindsets. There's like this fighter mindset, like we have to fight this, and I understand that, and that is 100% true. I mean, we do not want to give this disease anything more than we absolutely have to give it. But then there's also kind of this mindset of acceptance, and I think that's and grieving, you know, the loss of kind of the life that you had before. And I think that for whatever reason, women seem to be more in that latter category of being able to try and focus more on that grieving process and processing the emotions and of what we have to work through to sort of stay positive and move forward with this disease. Um, but it is hard to make generalizations because I see it on both sides. Probably the main thing I notice with the gender differences functionally is that um, just as a woman, And I've seen studies on this and stuff too, like the work that we do at home, you know, is not always shared
Yeah.
as it should be, you know? And so that doesn't adapt well when the woman gets a chronic disease. It's very hard for that work to be taken up by even a willing partner. I mean, my husband is amazing. He does so much. I mean, he is such a better cook than me. He is such a better organized person than me. I mean, he cleans. He is amazing, but he has to work, you know, too. And so the woman tends to be that what we call a default parent, you know, the one that picks the kids up from school because I'm home, you know. And even the women that work, frankly, that tends to be our role. And so we have this whole other set of stressors, you know, that men don't have. It's like when I got diagnosed, actually, my husband took time off work to watch the kids, and I went to Phoenix. And when I came back, it was like, okay, I have Parkinson's disease. What's for dinner? You know? I mean, those tasks don't change, and I can't, you know, resign from them. You know, I do fortunately have help. I think that was probably the biggest help that I got was I have someone that comes to my home every week and helps, you know, clean and keep me organized and things like that. But I think that's the big burden of women, not just in this disease, but in this society, which is doesn't go away when you have chronic disease and frankly drains us, you know, physically and emotionally. As much as we love our families, it's just a lot of work. You know, as women in general, we share these different burdens, right? But it's a safer space in a lot of ways. It's easier to open up. There's a lot of research now into how our symptoms are tied to our hormones, our menstrual cycles. You know, I mentioned the softening in my voice started, which I consider probably my cardinal symptom, started after the birth of my first child. I know many women who have said that as well. It's obviously a stressor on our bodies. So we're going through these physical changes as we age too, you know, perimenopause, menopause, and then we're picking the kids up from school and dropping them off at school and throwing birthday parties and wrapping Christmas presents. I have Nowruz coming up. It's going to be a big deal. You know, I have to coordinate all these things and these are such female things to do. I'm fortunate in that I don't really feel like I have too much cognitive issues, but I was telling my husband the other day, he keeps asking me for his passwords. But and I keep telling him babe, you're gonna have to like write your passwords down. You can't, you know, or you know, they'll your husband will ask you like when's auntie so and so's birthday. Like guys, I can't be the manager of the home forever and manage my own health as well and manage all your lives and where you put your shoes and all of those things. And so when you talk to other women, you know, those are the things that we talk about, things of having to do with our appearance. You know, we had a whole discussion about shoes. I had to give up a lot of my high heel shoes, and it seems like shoes and makeup and hair are such superficial things, but over your lifetime, when they get tied to who you are, but even more important, make you happy, you know, those little things. So to feel supported and to have somebody else say, you know, yeah, you know, but I got my hair cut short now. It's easier to manage, but I still look cute. Or, you know, yeah, I know, like we had to ask our, you know, husbands to maybe pick up some more slack and you know, they're happy to do it usually, but we have to communicate. And I just think in a lot of cases women need to communicate with other women to really feel understood and supported in this disease and in life. It's just a magical bond. I hope, and it's always kind of been my goal of advocacy to make this disease visible in the way that if I see a child, you know, stemming or acting out, I identify that, as do my children, as somebody who has autism. It's not scary. We don't question it. We're accommodating. We have special services for them, and they're integrated into society. With now obviously, these are very different diseases, but when someone sees someone like me at the grocery store shaking or walking strangely or tripping over myself, their go-to is that I'm drunk or maybe, on drugs, or it's scary and you get, like, we call that stink eye, like, um, and it shouldn't be like that. This is not an uncommon disease. It is uncommon in my age group, but that is not going to be the case forever, unfortunately. The data is very clear. It's doubled very rapidly in the last 10 years. And even more, about as much as I want a cure, I want to live well now. And I want people to see someone like me, just like they see someone older with a cane, and think, okay, this person has Parkinson's. They might take a little more time at the cash register. They might need a little bit of extra help at the airport, those kind of things. And come at us from a place of empathy, like we all should, and as humans, but unfortunately, doesn't always happen. But the more people like me and all of my friends in the community that put ourselves out there, that's always my purpose, is to sort of normalize this. Like if you see somebody doing sign language, or, and just not just take the stigma out of it, because that people assume that we're going to deteriorate really quickly, that we're going to lose our memory really quickly, that we're going to be in a wheelchair really quickly. I mean, I know people that have been having this disease 20 years and, they're still functioning at a pretty high level, So people need to understand that this is a chronic disease, and we need support now to keep us in the workplace, to keep us in society, to keep us, doing and contributing as much as we can for as long as we can. So that's my hope for the future, is that the society recognizes that, and we have more support services to back that up. That I am an ambassador for the Parkinson's Foundation. And I wish that I had known about that organization when I got diagnosed, because they just started clearing house for so much good information. I think when we talk about self-advocacy, part of that is that we do have to educate ourselves. I mean, realistically, our physicians don't have the time to guide us through every little stitch of information that we're going to need. And things like that are so helpful. And of course, don't forget to follow me on my social media accounts. I am at Shaking in My Boots One on Insta and Facebook, and as myself, Esther Labib-Kiyarash on X and TikTok. But on TikTok, I'm Esther Labib-Kiyarash, because I have too many characters in my name and it cut it off.